I'm Dr. Kimberly Manning.
And this is Dr. Ashley McMullen. And you're listening to the Human Doctor Podcast, where we explore the human side of medicine, along with teaching, living, learning, and all things in between. Using the power of storytelling, conversation, and connectedness.
Hey, we're two dope academic internal medicine doctors, but we ain't your doctors. So if you perceive anything we say here as medical advice, no, it ain't that. Also, the things we say, they only reflect our brilliant Black woman magic mind and not our employers.
You could have been anywhere, y'all, but you chose to be here with us, and we appreciate you. Let's go.
Woo, child. Well, honey, let's go on and check in, seeing as you work for this here United States government. Woo, and we laughing, but as the Grady elders say, ha ha hell. Funny. You ever heard somebody say ha ha hell?
Yes, ma'am. And if there was ever a moment where that was immediately applicable, it feels like this good Monday morning. Just having to respond to more chaos while also anticipating and expecting more chaos. But I'm grateful for the colleagues that I have here because we're just, weathering the storm together. And yeah.
It's crazy.
So
on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being awesome and 1 or 0
negative.
Where you at? Where you at?
I'm actually a content 4.8.
Come on.
Yeah. And I had to bring myself to that place this morning because when I woke up, it was not that. But I think that, in my own processes of meditation, prayer, intention, I feel like one of the things that I am dedicated to working on, particularly when there's so much upheaval, like in and around me, is recognizing that there's still a power of choice in terms of how to meet this moment with a sense of content and gratitude. And so, not necessarily, yearning or reaching for the past or kind of, having my eyes fixed on a specific outcome. Doesn't mean that I don't want things to change or I'm not hoping for things for myself in the future, but I am content with everything I have and I am right now. So I'm gonna claim that.
I love that. That's great. That's a good way to approach things when it feels chaotic, Um, I'm gonna say that I'm a busy 4.8.
Okay.
I have per usual some things to do that I have not done yet. Um, and I had the dreaded thing that happens where like something that you're supposed to do, you're trying to hurry up and get it in before they ask you for it again.
That becomes a new deadline.
Yes, and then I just got that like second, like, hey, just putting this to the top of your email. I was like, dang,
Yes.
oh man. So yeah. Yeah, there's that. So that's annoying. But I am on the hospital service right now, and there is nothing like caring for a vulnerable patient population to ground you and remind you that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing and that people need you to keep your eyes on the prize of helping them to thrive. I mean, and that's the truth. I mean, man, because it's just so much that you can just feel so discouraged and distracted by with all the news and everything. But, some days I'm just like, I'm just one doctor in one room with one patient explaining how diabetes works. I'm just one doctor in one room with one patient, holding their hand and telling them, I wish they didn't have cancer. And I'm like, you know what? That's not gonna go anywhere.
Yeah.
Hearts are still going to be hearts, and wishes are still going to be wishes, and lives are still going to be lives. And I don't want anybody to suck everything out of me to the point that I don't have nothing left to give.
Ooh, yeah.
So ha ha hell. So anything new you want to share?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think keeping along this theme and part of why I, felt the need and the ability to kind of try to cultivate a mindset of contentment was, I actually had a really wonderful weekend. On Saturday, UCSF had its annual Black Caucus Gala,
Okay.
which is an organization that, was formulated back in the 60s. They have a very profound civil rights history back when Black workers at UCSF were relegated to the basements, getting unfair wages and dehumanizing treatments. And they stood up and advocated. And here we are, like decades later, in a room full of, amazing Black staff, Black faculty, like across all divisions and departments. Seeing one of our division chiefs on the dance floor turn it up to Kendrick Lamar will forever be like seared
Mm,
in my spirit. It was just a lot of like joy and celebration.
mm,
And then on top of that, yesterday Oakland had its Black Joy parade and
mm,
festival, just a
mm.
couple blocks from my home. So a couple
A
of
Black Joy Parade?
yes,
What does
yes.
that even look like?
It looks like joy. It looks like joy. And in this same weekend, I learned about this poem that I think sums it all up.
Mhm.
And it's a poem called How Can Black People Write About Flowers at a Time Like This?
Mm,
I don't know if you've heard of this poet, but his name is Hanif Abdur Rakib.
mm-mm.
I learned about the backstory to this poem, which was him attending, I think it was either a poetry reading or some sort of literary gathering back in 2016, where there was a Black artist who was sharing, this very descriptive lyrical poetry about flowers. And Hanif was in the audience and he overheard a white woman behind him, like just kind of flabbergasted and literally said the words, like, how can Black people talk about flowers right now? His takeaway wasn't even one of like, anger or frustration, but genuine curiosity and the sense of like, Black people have always found means of joy and culture and song and beauty, regardless of the circumstances. And I think that extends to many, many cultures, but I think that that poem in particular feels very, very timely for me right now.
Love it. I thought you was getting ready to read the poem to
I
us.
mean, I could.
I mean, I was like getting myself all situated. I feel like the listeners are like similarly. I mean, is it long?
I think there's a couple of poems in this series. I feel like
You want us to
I would
just soak
invite
in?
you
Okay.
to look it up, listen, we'll post it in the show notes. And I think it's also,
Yeah. Oh yeah, we got show notes.
yeah,
Right. Shout out to Catherine. I
shout
saw
out
her
to Catherine. Because I
today.
think that also it's good to hear it read in his voice.
Oh, even better.
Yeah.
Okay. I like it. I'll
Hmm.
take that. I'll take that. You know what? I am re-listening to something that I think we might have talked about before. Have you ever read Quiet by Susan Cain?
No, it's not ringing a bell.
It's a work of nonfiction. It is a book about introverts
Oh,
in a world where nobody will shut up, basically.
oh, I have heard of this book.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I first picked that book up years ago because I had an advisee in my student small group who was very reserved and I would say introverted. I mean, I think it was probably a fair assessment. Like I wanted to try to better understand and relate to students and people like her, and I heard that was a good book. And it was when I picked up that book for the first time that I discovered that I'm not an extrovert. I think more than anything, I'm probably what she calls an ambivert,
Mhm.
which is where depending on the situation. So I actually think in very familiar settings, I probably come across extroverted. So walking through Grady Hospital, I'm probably extroverted.
Mhm.
But most places in my life, I prefer intimacy. I like time alone. I like to think and write my ideas down by myself. And then after I've processed, I want to get with other people.
Yeah.
But that's a great book. I think it's a great book to help you appreciate how powerful introverted people can be if we would just get out of their way and let them be awesome.
As a card carrying introvert. Um, I, I recall hearing about this book and actually thinking like I need to read this. So this is affirmation for me.
Yeah. Yeah. On this day that you've been waiting for, it is not a day where you have to listen to Dr. Kimberly Manning
Please.
wax poetic. No, no, no. You get to hear the eloquent, the thoughtful, the well-read, well-traveled, tree-loving, flower-loving, and poetry listening to walking embodiment of Black joy that we know as Ashley McMullen.
Wow.
That's pretty good, huh? Kings, queens, and non-binary royalty, it's your lucky day. So, sis, what is the what?
The what is insight
Insight.
or insightfulness. I've been kind of back and forth, but
You know what's terrible? When you
was
said insight, the first thing I thought of was fighting somebody, like inciting violence. That's too bad. This means that this world got me and not in a good place. So I need to settle into this. Insight. INSIGHT. Not to be
correct.
confused with INCITE.
Yes.
All right, we ready.
Yes, the power of words. So, in this case, thinking about an awareness into the true nature of things. So, I've been thinking a lot actually since you told a really important story about proximity to different lived experiences.
Hmm.
And, I've thought about a couple of moments that have resonated with me over these last couple of years that really started around college and immediately afterwards for me. Going back to that time, I remember, growing up mostly in Texas, in Houston, like obviously a very large and diverse city, but particularly a large Spanish speaking population
Hmm.
and many folks from different countries for whom Spanish is their primary and only language. And it was not uncommon hearing, these kind of grumblings growing up, even from people that I respected, kind of complaining about like, God, why can't they learn English?
Hmm.
Coming, this is America, like you should be able to speak the language and,
Right.
kind of voicing that frustration with a lot of kind of contempt and misunderstanding. But, I remember being like a young adult and just kind of taking that in and just kind of adopting it as my own point of view. We're just like, yeah, of course, like that's really inconvenient for me to not be able to communicate. And when I got to college at Trinity University, which I want to shout out, a couple of alums have emailed me recently, and I want to
Aw.
say thank you for listening.
Aw.
Trinity is a small liberal arts school in San Antonio, but also has like a sizable international student population. That was pretty cool to kind of get to know those folks over those 4 years. And, I remember like literally for the first time in my life, like meeting people my age who spoke like multiple languages and
Wow.
like spoke them fluently.
Mm.
One memory that I'll share, and then I'm going to go into another story. Our very first year in college, we were all required to take this writing workshop.
Hmm.
I remember one day during class, we were, paired randomly with folks we didn't know, and we had all been assigned to write something, just like a personal story, and then we had to like share and critique it with this other person. And I remember being paired with an international student who was from Ecuador. Before we spoke, we just, traded essays and I was reading her essays. And I remember vividly like feeling very frustrated and annoyed because, there were actually quite a few like grammatical errors. And I was just like, this is BS. And then when I actually spoke to her and she shared with me like her culture and relationships in Ecuador, like I remember feeling blown away by how beautiful the story was and kind of shocked at how I, was just so hung up on the language issues in her essay
Mm. Mm.
and feeling very humbled and sheepish about that. And so, fast forward to my junior year of college, I did a research fellowship at Harvard.
Okay.
It was my first time ever setting foot on an Ivy League campus or even like thinking that I might have proximity to that type of institution.
Mhm.
And I met someone who would go on to be like one of my closest friends and one of the most important friends in my life. I think I've shouted her out before, but her name is Dr. Edith Bracho Sanchez. And at the time, we were both undergrads doing this research program, and we happened to be assigned to the same lab. And so we spent a lot of time together, just commuting back and forth from campus to the lab, which was in a different part of Boston. But what I learned about Edith and being close to her was that she was originally from Venezuela. She had immigrated to the United States with her family as a high schooler
Mm.
and didn't speak any English when she came to the States, which I was shocked by
Mm.
because we were writing personal statements, getting ready, like talking about applying to medical school. And like she was such a better writer than I was, which was
Mm.
kind of infuriating. It's just brilliant and so hardworking. And I learned so much from her, but I remember there were moments when we were talking about schools that we were applying to, and I had kind of tossed out a couple of, schools that were fine in their own right, but, very much on the kind of lower tier of competitiveness. And she was just like genuinely asking, she was like, why would you do that? Like, why would you sell yourself short like that?
Mm.
Just kind of like planting these seeds of, encouragement in me and, just seeing through her eyes, like this whole experience of foundational disruption in your home and also what opportunities are available to you. And so one day I remember vividly, we were in the cafeteria eating breakfast, getting ready to go to work. And I remember her being very distressed. And I think she was crying or like kind of on the verge of tears. And I was just like, what's going on? And she had found out that her family's green card application that her dad had put forth had been rejected.
Mm.
As a young adult at that time, I did not have any awareness of that process
Mm.
or how difficult it is in the best of circumstances. So here you have folks who came in by the book, this incredible family, Edith, her siblings, they're all in college. The family is, just, really trying to do their best to give back to society in their new country and still got rejected.
Mm.
And really the understanding being like in order to have even a shot at having an application go through, they were going to have to shell out thousands of dollars
Mm.
to hire a lawyer, which at that time was going to be very challenging.
Mm.
And it wasn't clear like what the path would be. She might have a path individually just through school, but wasn't going to not be here without her family. And I was floored. I remember almost panicking. I was like, this can't happen. Like, we're gonna have to figure something out. Like I can hide you like in my home, like really kind of earth-shattering insights into how difficult and how terrible that process can be. And so fast forward, they were able with a lot more turbulence and a lot more money spent to get that citizenship status. But, it was kind of the beginning of a new awareness for me
Mhm.
in terms
Mhm.
of like, how flippant we can often be with, how we think about privilege and citizenship and go the legal route, so to speak. And
Mhm.
how many of us know what that actually means? Like, what
Yeah.
does that actually feel like? And as I've gotten older and interacted with more folks, in the academic space and residency and seeing other close friends have to go through that process, it's not lost on me why that path is just out of reach for so many people. And, I tell that story not to kind of preach to the choir. I know a lot of our listeners are very sympathetic to, a lot of the language and the cruelty that's being directed towards immigrants here in the United States and I'm sure elsewhere. But I think it also is a constant reminder to me of what gaps and awareness I hold, not from the point of just, trying to earn my card carrying status as a woke individual, so to speak, but really like, when I take inventory of, who are my relationships, who are my friends, there's things that I am very aware now that are missing. Like, there's a lot of experiences that I would, love to have more insights. It puts you in a better position to really empathize, advocate for, hold a place of compassion and humility for all the different ways in which humans can exist.
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful. I mean, beautiful and insightful, I would
Mm-hmm.
say. I guess insight was your word.
Yeah. See what I did there?
Yeah, I see what you did there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just I'm just kind of turning it over in my head, some
Mm-hmm.
thinking about this idea that Brian Stevenson talks about of proximity. He says
Mm-hmm.
that he always talks about how we need to get proximate, and the more proximate you get to people, the more personal it becomes, and the more you feel, and how it kind of opens your mind up some.
Mm-hmm.
There's just so much that we're insulated from, especially if you even just get removed one generation from your parents and you become a medical doctor. You are now in a whole different sort of circle of people, and you know, some of the things that are hardships that people in your immediate family deal with, you just don't even think about it because it's not what you live in every day until something makes you proximate
Mm-hmm.
uh, to it, right? So I would say that, most Black folks, regardless of who they are, they they're proximate to somebody because, just the way the structures are, there's always somebody in the generation before who doesn't have it like you and who's
Mm-hmm.
leaning
Mm-hmm.
on you, whether it be for knowledge or whether it be for actual resources. But there's more than just that for us to tap into, right? Knowing about what it's like to have. I remember one of my advisees, her parents didn't speak English,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and I just was like, I never even thought about what must it be like to be a medical student, where neither one of your parents speak English, right?
Right.
Or there was another student I worked with years ago. I remember he was from South Georgia, and his parents were Chinese immigrants, and they had a Chinese restaurant in South Georgia, and that was their livelihood. And they basically worked tooth and nail to get their kids better opportunities. And this was a top student at Emory.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Ended up getting his number one choice for match and everything. But I do remember when he would have like a week off of school, he would be driving to South Georgia to work in the restaurant.
Mm.
He would get a golden weekend and he would drive straight to South Georgia and work the whole weekend just to, give his parents a little bit of a break. And
Mm-hmm.
that just conceptually was not something that I could even fully wrap my head around. And this was like a 3 or 4 hour drive away.
Yeah.
So can you imagine like being a medical student and being like, okay, you got the weekend off and you trying to get up out of here just so that you can get there in time to help your parents with
Mm-hmm.
the evening rush.
Yeah.
But being proximate, um, that taught me that nothing is what it looks like on the outside. Just because you showing up every day and you got the standard issue Patagonia like everybody else,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't mean that, when you walk out of here, there's a whole world that nobody understands is going on with you.
Yeah.
Um,
To resonate with that, I've learned this lesson in so many different ways throughout my life, to the extent that I've been open and accepting. But I think nowhere has it become more necessary and humbling than in my role as an educator.
mm,
And I'm still fairly new to this game as far as, being a med student coach.
mhm.
But I think that, my first year in that role was the thing that really smacked me over the head in terms of I'm in this position to cultivating and care for these young minds, so to
Yeah.
speak, and really understanding how much I need to learn from them, and particularly for my students who, are first gen, trying to talk about advising around career choices when they're already coming into medical school, like with responsibilities and expectations
But this is all like, again, supporting the case for us to have environments where everybody isn't the same, you know?
Hmm.
Um, and it isn't, I know that sometimes people think it's all like related to race or ethnicity
Hmm.
or, but it even like when we think about the time that we were talking about working with somebody who is living with mental illness or living with a mental health diagnosis, it's not until you get proximate to somebody who is living through their diagnosis and continuing to thrive that you begin to see and hear things differently, right?
Yeah.
So the same could be said about, our immigrant population. It can be said about, our LGBTQ population, individuals who are, socioeconomically disadvantaged. No matter whatever is different from you,
Hmm.
it is totally different than the life lens that you saw the world coming up through. You better off when you get next to somebody that is different than you because they're going to
Hmm.
get you to think about stuff a little bit different,
Yes.
probably a lot different. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it makes you better.
Yes.
It makes you better.
Every time.
Yeah. So where's your friend now?
Edith is now in New York. She's a pediatrician, and a public figure. So,
Oh, girl.
I alone would never be able to do her story justice. I can only
Put
share
her.
through the lens of my experience, but you should follow her directly. She has a great newsletter and is a great advocate for both children and particularly, the Spanish speaking population in America.
Oh, that's dope.
Hmm.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. Shout out to Edith and shout out to you for honoring what she taught you.
Yes. I
And
look
shout
forward.
out to all of the doctors working in the VA hospitals, serving America's heroes. And shout out to everybody working for government agencies who are
Yes,
afraid right now and unsettled right now.
absolutely. I'm here with y'all in solidarity. And yeah, we'll get through it.
Yeah, to quote the great Kendrick Lamar, we
We
gonna,
gonna
gonna
be
be
all
all right.
right.
We gonna be, we gonna be all right. All my life I had to fight.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, girl. Well, on that note, I actually have to go back across the street to Grady and see what somebody talking about who's currently not pleased with something. But
Well, if anybody can turn that situation around, you can. So go forth.
I'm gonna just go and listen. I might not have the answer, but I do have 2 ears and I can listen.
There we go.
So, all right, sis.
All right.
Holla.
Holla. That wraps up this week's episode of the Human Doctor Podcast.
Special thanks to our favorite brother gastroenterologist, Dr. Chuma Obiname, for the beats. Shout out to the Dr. Ashley McMullen for editing and production.
Mad love to our podcast family at The Nocturnist and the Clinical Problem Solvers, our Med Twitter fam.
And especially shout out to all of you, our listeners.
Until next week, remember,
we see you and you are enough.
Holla!
Holla.